So if you've watched my channel for any time now, you know that I don't talk politics one way or the other. We have a very divided country, and why would I alienate 50% of my potential clients as a real estate agent? But there's one huge story that is very politically charged here locally, and that's with the Disney Reedy Creek Special Exemption District here in Orange and Osceola County. So today we're going to talk about the history, what it actually means, what would happen if it goes away, and how does that affect you as a homeowner here in Orlando. So it's no surprise to you probably by now, just looking around, that I'm a Disney fan. I'm a shareholder, I'm an annual pass holder, and I live in the shadow of Magic Kingdom. That being said, let's kind of dispel some of the myths as we go through the history and sort of the facts of what Disney is, what Reedy Creek is, and now after the House and the Senate have now voted to get rid of that special tax exemption for Disney, what that's going to mean for us homeowners here in Orange County. All right, so let's kick it back to the 1960s when Walt Disney came to Central Florida and started buying up tens of thousands of acres of land in different shell company names, right? He'd buy one here and another one over here, different names so the price of land didn't get driven up. Everything from like the Latin American Land Company to MT Lot, which I think was my favorite one, Retlaw, which is Walter spelt backwards. And so he amasses all of this land, right, and has it all under contract. Then he goes to the state of Florida and says, hey, we want to create a special use district, a special tax exemption essentially of this area because we're going to be investing a ton of money in infrastructure, people. It's going to be really good for Florida. Now, he wasn't the first and he's not definitely been the last. There's currently over 1,800 special tax districts in the state of Florida. Another really well-known one is the Villages, which is the largest active adult retirement community in the world. They have a very similar tax status as Walt Disney World does for Reedy Creek. The Reedy Creek Development District is essentially that 25,000 acres of land that Walt Disney put together to then put Walt Disney World inside. But what is a special tax district? So in 1967, they create the Reedy Creek Special Tax District Act, and it basically has three things that each one of these districts need to have. Number one, they give it their own governing power with policy-making decisions, so they can help with doing permits, they can help with zoning, they can kind of control a lot of the stuff that goes in there without having to worry about what another county might say. Number two, they have to be able to offer police, fire, and essential services for this district and cover that cost themselves. Number three is that they actually only have these powers within a very specific niche, right? Or this specific geographic area, which is the Reedy Creek development that Walt Disney World is in. And so you've seen this, right? You've seen driving around how Disney has their own fire, their own police. They basically have their own body, their government that they can make decisions on rezoning things. And it makes it very easy for them to not have to go to the county to make decisions like Universal and SeaWorld and Gatorland and all of the other places here in Orlando they have to go through. Disney's a little bit special in that because they tax themselves and manage themselves, they don't have to worry about going to that next level to get things approved. There's been dozens of articles and politicians that have come up against Disney over the past few years. Even 3 years ago, there was people that came out and said, hey, if Disney wanted to create a nuclear power plant, they could. We should at least take that away from them because Disney actually wants to create a nuclear power plant. They actually don't. They want to do more solar. They want to do more other things. But people were looking at how can we start sort of chipping away at some of the powers that they have, which are kind of unchecked in some ways. They could create their own distillery if they wanted to. That's actually part of it. Would they? I don't know, but I think that would actually be more fun than talking about this tax exemption thing. Anyways, let's talk a little bit about what they currently pay, and then if this does actually go away, how that affects people here locally in Orlando. So I know I've talked about how Disney has kind of like unchecked powers, but at the end of the day, they still pay taxes. They still have to look at Orange County and have building inspectors come in. There's not completely like the wild, wild west inside of Reedy Creek. There's definitely higher standards that are expected at Walt Disney World than other places around the country, around the state. And so I remember I was sitting in a room listening to Rick Singh, who is the former Orange County appraiser, and he was kind of like laughing along the way of like, hey, I finally got Disney to start paying more and more taxes because we reassessed a lot of their properties. And in 2020, that came down crashing on him as the courts kind of ruled on the favor of Disney, that how the county was going in and looking at these like luxury hotels, and how do you even like assess Magic Kingdom and Cinderella's castle? It's like a very, very tough sort of thing to do. And so they've had to rework a lot of how they actually assess Disney. And it's been an interesting kind of battle to go watch back and forth in the news. And so even though this is a huge story, it's a national story what's going on with the Reedy Creek district, really because it's been so politicized, none of these things are actually new. Disney's constantly looking at how can we reduce our tax burden to make more money, because at the end of the day, yeah, it's the most magical place on earth, but they're a business. They're here to make money, and so that's what they're kind of looking to do. But I was going through the tax records, and there were some interesting things for me to kind of like share with you guys today. So if you look at like, say, Magic Kingdom, for example, they're currently assessed at almost $500 million just for Magic Kingdom, and they're paying something like, well, in 2021, they paid $5.9 million in property tax just for Magic Kingdom. Beyond that, you look at sort of the 288 developed parcels of Walt Disney World within Reedy Creek. They're basically assessed by the county at somewhere in the $10 billion range, paying over $135 million in property tax that goes to the state and goes to the county and goes to schools and goes to the library and really helps us support sort of our general area. But let's back up their sort of economic power even more than that. They currently employ something like 77,000 people at the Walt Disney World Resort. That's the biggest single site employer in the entire country. According to the Florida Tourism District, they're talking about a $75 billion economic impact on the Central Florida area. And so at the same time, a lot of this stuff is that they're trying to make money. They make money hand over fist. Disney's not hurting financially, but they also give back a ton in economic power to our state. And so that's why a lot of this sort of political back and forth is an interesting thing. But what you came here to do is find out, what does this actually mean for me as a homeowner? Or maybe if I want to buy a house, what is this going to mean to me if the district finally goes away and the homeowners here locally have to pay for a lot of their stuff? All right, so what does this actually mean for local homeowners? Well, at the end of the day, there's a bunch of unknowns. There's people that are saying that Disney has a $2 billion bond that they would have to then transfer over to the county, and those county people would have to divide up and pay for. There's something like 438,000 rooftops in Orange County. You divide that out, it's something like $4,500 per household. Now, do I think that would actually happen on top of us having to pay for their fire and law and water and all the other kind of stuff? I don't think that would actually happen. But if it does, I've seen low estimates of $250 per household all the way up to that $4,500. Do I think any of this is actually going to happen? No, because if you look at sort of this right here, it talks about how the governing body, meaning Reedy Creek itself, has to either dissolve itself, or the people that it would then put the burden on, being the Osceola and Orange County residents, would have to then take on that burden. Do I think either of those things is going to happen? No, I don't. And so at the end of the day, this is all just really political theater. It's an election year. You've got both sides looking for an argument, and they're going to find one, with the mouse kind of being in the middle. Does this help anybody locally? I don't know that it does. Does it hurt us? Well, maybe we're having better conversations around business ownership and what they're giving to the local community. I don't know. At the end of the day, I think Disney's going to be just fine. Will they think about moving Walt Disney World like some politicians have said? No, I don't think that it goes to Colorado or Pennsylvania. They're not going to just pick up the Carousel of Progress and move this. This isn't the World's Fair. I guess they could technically move the Carousel of Progress, but not like Galaxy's Edge or something like that. Maybe they make some decisions on, do they bring more jobs here? Do they decide to spend that $1 billion on the new campus over in Lake Nona? Those are the real conversations that I'm most concerned with, not really the, does Reedy Creek dissolve and then us have to pay an extra few $100s a year, because I don't see that happening. What I do look at is the political and corporate partnership in Florida and then bringing more jobs here. So last thing that I'll leave you with before we end this video is that's why I look at like Orlando. If you take out tourism, you take out hospitality, what's left over, and then you start looking at the tech space and the aviation departments and a lot of other companies that are moving here, we're not yet strong enough to get rid of tourism altogether. And so I do believe that the politicians know this, and that they're not going to shoot their golden goose here locally locally, and then at the end of the day, it'll all get figured out. So hopefully that history lesson and sort of my perspective is helpful for you. If you're still thinking about moving here, I think it's a great thing to do. If you currently live here and you're looking to sell, my team and I, we'd love to be your real estate resource of choice, whether you're buying or selling in Orlando. So make sure you reach out at info@pozekgroup.com. And then before you leave, hit the subscribe button, as we're putting out new videos every single week about life in Orlando. We'll see you guys on the next video.